I'm one of the few diehards, but it shows that there is a connection that people identify with these other countries, and you don't have to limit yourself. I get patriotism; that's fine. Obviously from the U.S., you're going to support the U.S. men's national team, Mexico, Trinidad for me. But for me, Argentina, and I say with no apologies, I absolutely fell in love with that team.
All right, and we are back again, episode 46 of the Box to Box podcast. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jose Tejas. I am the primary host of this show. We have a very special guest, as we normally do on the show today. I'll tee him up with a great intro in just 1 second. But before I do, guys, if you haven't already done so, like the video down below, subscribe to the channel. Every free layer of support really does matter, helps us get the word out about not just this channel, not just GOLZtv, but more importantly, about growing the beautiful game here in the States, which is what we're all immensely passionate about here. Now, with that said, Box to Box presented by GOLZtv. GOLZtv, where you can get your free, unlimited, fan-made footy content today. For more information, head to GOLZtv now. All right, intro out of the way. On to our guest. He is the host, or one of the hosts, I should say, of ExtraTime TV. I'm super glad that he's here. We're going to be talking footy in a million different ways. I got a strong feeling about that. Andre from ExtraTime TV, you are here today as our guest. How are you, my man?
Man, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's always fun to meet creators from all over the planet. So it's an I'm stoked. I'm ready to do this.
Same, man. Same. I'm glad that you're here. I got a feeling it's going to be a fun one, a funny one, probably entertaining as hell. I'm excited to jump all into it. But you already know what question I'm going to kind of start things off with, kick off the show today. It's the question we always ask. Andre, who are you today?
I love that question because it's so different. I'm so trained. I'm doing this for a couple of years now where they ask, the generic questions, kind of look inside yourself question. But it's nice. I like it. To answer that question, I'm going to look like I'm all contemplating and stuff. But the person I see myself as now, that's how I interpret the question. It's a fan who became a creative, professional content creator. I don't know. I just made my own thing up.
I like it.
I was just a fan like everybody else. And I am at a place now where I can now do this with the same enthusiasm as a fanboy and be creative and professional about it.
Yeah. Look, man, that's probably one of the best descriptions we've had, in all honesty. I feel like that's a little bit of everybody, right? We're all fans who, at some point in our lives, wanted to make this into some kind of full-time career. You're living the dream. You're doing it. I think that there's a lot that our audience can pull in terms of value from this episode. So we're going to talk about your journey. We're going to start from the very beginning, kind of work our way to where you are today, and then maybe towards the end offer some teasers in terms of what new audience members can expect when they go visit ExtraTime TV. But let's start at the beginning, right? Start about your journey as a fan. You mentioned how passionate you are about this game, even off screen, before we jumped into the interview today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your earliest memories of football, man. I think that, it's always intriguing to me to understand how others are pulled into this game. For me, it was very much my family, but that's not always the case for a lot of fans. So let's tell the audience how you were brought into this game and what your earliest memories of football were.
Oh, wow. Football, I love to describe football because it is a universal language. Wherever you are, like you rightfully said, there's different triggers why people fall in love with this game. And I use the word love because it's an emotional connection. There's nothing logical about this. I even joked on another show I was on last night. Someone asked me a similar question why I liked Inter Milan, and I said it's something. It's almost. I even used the comparison of like falling in love with somebody. As cliche as that sounds, it happens.
Yeah.
My most clear memory was my country loves football, so that helps. We're a football mad country.
Loves football.
So, that helps. But also, as a kid, my parents, my mom and dad both love sports a lot. And I remembered my first vivid memory was looking at Argentina with my brother and my dad and being blown away. Now, everybody talks about Maradona, but I remember specifically liking Claudio Caniggia. And I'm like this 5-year-old, and I'm looking at the screen, and I'm just blown away by what these guys are physically able to achieve. I remember a specific goal he scored in the '94 World Cup, which was in the U.S. Against Nigeria, and that image, that's how detailed it is because I'm talking about it now, stuck in my head forever. And I just knew, listen, I'm in love with this, and I want to try to be able to do that. And I wanted to go outside, and my brother and I would go outside, and we would play. My dad, kudos to him. He built, we had an actual goal in our yard, a regulation size goal that he put together himself. So, since we were kids, it was just, we would have footballs around the house. We say football, and, kicking them around, breaking stuff. And my mom was cool about it. Most people wouldn't think their parents would be cool about it. And, it was just, that was it from there. It was just in my DNA. And, as I got older and I started to play, it just became more and more intense, and it grew, and I started to identify with the teams that I liked. And it was just something that it's just, it never fades, and it never will fade. And, that's honestly the best way for me to describe it. With my first experience, that one thing just triggered it off for me. But or maybe the multiple things: parents, seeing Kanija's goal, and just growing up in a family that loves football.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy how much your family influences you, right? And on a number of levels, but with football specifically, I mean, I know, you mentioned your passion for Inter Milan, and we'll talk about Inter here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
They're, right now, fantastic run in the Champions League. I think you mentioned the goal, the earliest goal you remember Argentina scoring, and in the '94 World Cup, and I think fans today, especially the younger fans, Gen Z, can relate if they were around to see the 2014 World Cup, Argentina scoring, or Messi specifically scoring against Nigeria. And I feel like that matchup by itself has so many roots to it, right? But we haven't really talked about, I think, your country. I'm personally very curious. You're an Argentina fan who grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, when that country itself, for American fans who don't understand how big and how popular football can be in other parts of the world, what's the culture like there, and what was it like to be embedded in it?
That's a brilliant question, because I was having a discussion with one of my friends. He lives in Miami, and we were talking about that. I remembered going to the Copa Centenario in 2016. Massive tournament, great. It was beautiful. Argentina lost, broke my heart, but that's okay. But lots of people, I remembered, I went to USA. Klinsmann was the coach at the time, versus Argentina. And, Argentina did what they did. Amazing performance, wiped the floor with the US, unfortunately.
That free kick was beyond unbelievable.
It's beautiful.
I mean, beautiful.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I went through great detail with the national coach at the time, how technically brilliant it was. But that's a whole other story. Because, it's crazy. But, there was a guy after the game, an American guy, and he came up to me and was like, no, he thought I was South American. But then when I spoke, he got a little confused, and he was like, well, where are you from? I was like, I'm from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. And he was like, oh, so why do you support Argentina then? You could see how confused he was. And we had a conversation, but he was genuinely bewildered. He was like, so why won't you support your own country? And eventually we had a discussion, and many people asked me this, and I told them, like, I'm a huge fan of my country. I always support them. I will be a patriot. I actually worked with my national team with the women's senior team. I work around the senior men's team a lot with the coaches and so on. But it just shows you how universal this game is. Football, is not something limited. And I guess that's what you're trying to achieve here, to show how beautiful this game is. It transcends, borders and things like that, where a guy or a person or whoever it is can be wherever they are on the planet. Football touches you in that way that only you know. That's unique to you. And, I fell in love with the way not just how they play, but the culture of the Argentines is a passionate, fiery way they play. And everybody likes their teams for their various reasons, just like clubs. But for Argentina, for me, I would like to say, Diego Maradona. I guess like what Messi would be now. He was just that good. And, some people like Pelé and Brazil and so on. But it's something, and it's also very unique to Trinidad and Tobago, where we had an under-17 World Cup, and the Argentina played a game, and there was Brazil and Spain and so on, and the FIFA media people were saying, some of those games felt like home games for those countries, because I think, yes, while our country is small in stature, and we will support them, sometimes it's pretty bad sometimes, but I'm one of the few diehards, but it shows that there is a connection, that people identify with these other countries, and you don't have to limit yourself. I get patriotism. That's fine. Obviously from the US, you're going to support the US men's national team, Mexico, Trinidad for me. But for me, Argentina, and I say with no apologies, I absolutely fell in love with that team instantly. And it's always been, I continue to form deeper connections with the country. I love the culture, as I said before. I love their approach to the game. This is not even the technical aspects. Culturally, just the passion they have is just something so admirable.
It's immense.
It's insane.
You feel it. It feels like it's physically around you
Yeah,
sometimes. Like you're just it hits you different.
It's indescribable, and that's kind of like why, even though I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and we have a massive footballing culture here. If you speak to different Trinidadians, and the World Cup was back in a couple of weeks ago, it feels like yesterday, but for me, it felt like 5 seconds ago because I loved it. But Trinidadians definitely draw the line. Like during the World Cup, you had your Argentinian fans. They're Trinis, but they have your Argentinian fans. You have your Brazil fans. You have your Ronaldo and Portugal fans. And, it's just one of those things, that it's unique to us because I've realized, being in and around the States, that sometimes it confuses people. But, it is what it is. And that's football for you. And I think, just to end that point, that's where players like Messi and Maradona and Ronaldo and all these other people, whether you like them or not, their stature in the game transcends and breaks all those things. I mean, you had people in Brazil, you understand the rivalry between Argentina and Brazil, supporting Lionel Messi in the Copa America final and the World Cup. That's insane. That's crazy.
That's insane. It blows my mind because it's actually somewhat of in certain instances in the past, right? I don't want to go as far as saying like a violent rivalry, but it's very, very tense between those two nations. And the fact that, like you said, you have Brazilians adamantly supporting Argentina on their path to a World Cup final. And then, of course, the trophy. It still kind of blows my mind that the game has grown to this point, because I do remember when that was a contentious subject. I remember Carlos Tevez getting threats as a player for playing in the Brazilian league, right? After he'd spent so many years playing in Argentina. So it's crazy how the game has evolved. And I like the point you made. I maybe want to go a little bit deeper on this. I like the point you made regarding it's not solely about patriotism, right? I think the game transcends that. And I think as Americans, I think sometimes they forget that point, that not even for international football, but for club football, right? When you think about the club teams that you're able to support, the biggest leagues in the world don't exist here in the States. They exist abroad, globally. And that means that in a world where, with American sports, most fans pick their local team, their local club, whoever that may be. And that's kind of how they produce their own fandom, and with that rabbit hole they go down. However, with global club football, you have the unique opportunity, right? You're an Inter Milan fan. My family are diehard Barcelona fans, yet we're not Spanish, we're Mexican. And it's one of those things where, and it's not necessarily just even me, right? It's my father, it's my uncles, it's other family members that brought me into that fandom. We have an opportunity, a unique opportunity, to pick and choose the clubs that we resonate with most, right? So talking about the passion that you have for not just Argentina, but for Inter Milan. I mean, talk to me a little bit about where some of that comes from. Like, where was that influenced by? Was it watching players like Hernan Crespo, another Argentinian, or Christian Vieri, or any one of the Inter Milan legends, Diego Milito, like whoever it may be? Was it the crossover between Argentina and some of the players who have come through Inter, or was it deeper than that?
Definitely the Argentinian connection. I mean, there are Argentinians everywhere. I'm a huge fan.
That's very true.
Yeah, they're all over the place. So, if I look at a lot of clubs, and I guess that's because that's the coaching side of me, I think like a coach. Like, I look at Argentinian players. I mean, that's my job as well. But, I look however they're performing in different clubs. So when I do my analysis before the World Cup, like I had to do a report on Argentina before the last World Cup, which thankfully turned out to be correct. They won. But, My thing with Inter Milan is I was looking at Syria, which was popular at the time. It's no longer as popular as it is now, because obviously with the money of the EPL and so on and marketing. But the Syria was the place to be back then. There were a lot of teams, individuals I liked. But what I liked about Inter was Zanetti, Javier Zanetti. I just thought this guy was just an impeccable player and a person. Thank God there's so many YouTube videos, but this guy wasn't a typical Argentinian because he was very clean cut. Back then, they all had long hair and, stereotypical Argentinians, he was very clean cut. He had this sort of Boy Scout look. That's not why I liked him, but he was kind of noticeable. I was like, oh, I thought he was Italian at first. And then I realized with him, and then his ability to attack, his ability to keep the ball. And then he was eventually the captain of Inter Milan. And then I obviously I started to pay a bit more attention to the club and why they became, what's the difference between Inter Milan and AC Milan, because my brother liked AC Milan and he liked Dutch players and so on from that team. And, they were once one club, and the history of the club was, which I love, it was very progressive even back then, where there was an argument, and I'm pretty much condensing this, where the use of international players caused a divisive line within the club. There was a section that didn't want that. We don't want foreign players. And that's what caused a split, and that's what they formed, Inter Milan. And that's where the name came from, international, Inter Milan. And that's something I admired a lot. And, then, of course, signing a lot of Argentines helped. That helped the transition a lot. So, there was a time, at one point in time, they used to call them the Argentina B team. And then there were lots of Italians as well. There's a lot of Argentinian, Italian heritage with this team. And that's essentially, and the thing is, when I fell in love with them, there's a bandwagon thing. People usually like teams that are winning. They weren't doing well. They had a whole bunch of star players, but they would just continuously mess up in Serie A. And, I always felt like this team was on the verge of greatness, but they just need to get it right. And, they had players like Ronaldo, the original one, as I like to call him. Christian Vieri and these guys, Zamorano from Chile, Jokaya from France, who were the top players at the time. They were kind of like a Galacticos before there was a Galacticos. And then, it just eventually I just, stuck with them because I always knew this team and the culture that they had and what they represent was something I could have identified with. And, eventually it paid off. They got the Scudetto in 2006, even though it was because of the scandal. And, they finally won the treble in 2010, which was a beautiful moment, and this is another moment that transcends football. A lot of people I spoke, there was an article, I can't remember where, when Zanetti lifted the trophy, I think there was an article on ESPN saying, even if you're not a fan of Inter Milan, all football fans probably smiled a little bit when Zanetti raised the trophy. And I think Zanetti was a key influence in me really falling in love with Inter Milan.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't want to bring up that that 2010 treble too much, right? I mean, it came at the cost of.
I know,
but
I know.
That was a rough one for us to watch, and watching Mourinho slide down the side of the field, and
Mourinho, he does that.
Yeah, he does that. He knows how to get the best and the rise out of Barcelona fans, and then of course that was his audition, right, for the Real Madrid job. I think that at the end of the day, it's a crazy way to become passionate about a club. I feel like, look, I don't want to be super critical of American fans, but we do have this, I call it the bandwagon effect, right, where I feel like I'm running into more Real Madrid fans than I've ever run into in my entire life. And I feel like it's easy to count trophies, right? It's easy to look at what team has been most successful over the greatest period of time and be like, hey, that's my team. And I feel like your passion stems from other reasons, right, from other motivating factors that have built you into this super fan of a club that's had some success, but hasn't been the most dominant club. And that's the journey of being a fan. I think it's amazing. I love it. Something you said did stick out there a little bit too. Your brother, the relationship between you and your brother as fans, opposite ends of a major rivalry, right? Between Inter Milan and AC Milan. And then I would say you go a little bit deeper. His passion for Dutch players, your passion for Argentinians, and how that blood may have boiled a little bit leading into the World Cup. What was it, the quarterfinal, I believe, or maybe the round of 16.
It's interesting because he loves Argentina, which is strange. He's a strange guy. That guy. Because he loves Argentina. Make no mistake. I think if you ask him, but I have a lot of respect for Dutch football. I think the way football is played today, especially with Barcelona, it's heavily influenced by Cruyff and those guys. So I can openly say that I have a lot of respect for them. Like, even I feel sorry for Dutch fans because, they haven't won anything. I think they're such a brilliant team, especially like maybe back in 1998, 2000, I felt like they had like an unstoppable team. And it just shows you how you can have the best team and it doesn't work out. They were playing good football. And, so back to your question, he has his preferences at club level. So, even that, that's where we disagree on. But I think with the national team is where that's our middle ground. But he likes the Dutch players. And, sometimes his friends poke a little fun at him. And it's like, hey, who are you really supporting, man? But it is an interesting dynamic how we can live in the same house and have a different liking for clubs. Like we generally have the same likes. To be fair to him, but it is interesting because he likes the Dutch players and respects them a lot more than maybe I do. And it's because of his respect for them that I paid attention to them. I was like, okay, these guys. So that I have to give him some credit for opening up my mind at a young age. Take a look at these guys like the Dennis Bergkamps and the total football style of football, and
Absolutely.
it helped me in my career, which I guess we'll talk about later on. My approach to football was, even though I am an Argentinian fan, I work in football, I work in analysis and so on, and I appreciate the strengths of each country's what they have to give. I appreciate, what the German style in certain ways. I appreciate the Italian style in certain ways, the Spanish, South America. And I think while I love that team, that open-mindedness has helped me in my career, which includes the ExtraTV and all these other things.
Yep. 100%, man. 100%.
Hmm.
And just a secondary question to piggyback on that. I mean, when that matchup happened,
Mhm.
right, in the knockout rounds, it was you could feel the animosity between the two teams.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, and then of course the world came down on Argentina.
Hmm.
I remember, social media blew up because, the gestures that some of the players were making, and the level of trash talk between the two teams, especially after they won the penalty shootout, right? And what that really felt like. Was there, what was the discourse like from your side after that match between you and your brother? How did it feel maybe in that house after that match had come and gone? Did it change the way you saw either side of those teams? And I don't know. I mean, was there any reaction to how the rest of the world reacted to Argentina winning?
Well, that's the thing is, well, my brother lives in Paris now, so we would chat, because he lives there, and
Yeah.
it didn't change our opinion on Argentina because I think we understood the wider narrative,
Yeah.
where they were poking. Van Gaal is that kind of guy. Like I've reached a stage. I don't want to say it like this because it sounds cocky, and I don't want to sound like that. But I've kind of evolved into more than just a fan because of my job by force. You're forced to look
Sure.
at things from a wider perspective. So, like, oftentimes I would have to speak, do analysis on teams I like, but you have to be fair and unbiased. So, like, for example, in the Argentina game, I would force myself, because we were doing a show, ExTV, during the World Cup with one of my other hosts, James Baird, a Scottish guy. And I was the only Argentinian fan there. They were all, and they had their reasons. They wanted Netherlands to win. Some of them just don't like Messi. We all know about the Ronaldo-Messi rivalry. That's so annoying sometimes. But anyway, it is what it is. I love Messi. I won't apologize for that. And
Me neither.
Yeah, and Barcelona, I guess. But
Yeah.
so one of the things there is a narrative which I don't like, and that's why I'm glad there's discussion groups like what we're having here, and even what my company, which is ExTV, and even the other networks I work on, where there was a lot of provocation from Van Gaal. That's what Van Gaal does. And I was trying to explain to a lot of people, they were looking at the context and portraying Argentina as villains. And they've always been I don't want to say fair, they've always been portrayed that way, which is highly inaccurate. They use the hand of ball thing all the time. Oh, remember the time he scored a hand of ball goal? And I can tell you what's interesting about that. I am good friends. I would even say almost one of my best friends played in that England team. We do podcasts together as well. His name is Terry Fennick. He was a centre back for England in 1986. He played against the guy. And if there is one guy who should have a reason to really bash Argentina, it would be him. And from an English perspective, he was like, yeah, of course he was mad. He wants to win, right? So of course he was pissed. And we joke about it all the time. Like, I wear my 86 jersey just to annoy him sometimes. I'll even send you a clip and you'll have a laugh. We always poke fun, but it shows when you are, and it's good. It's a healthy way of thinking where we both support these rival teams. He is English. He's not even a fanboy. He's part of the team, and, we could still sit down and have conversations and look past the narrative. Okay, yes, he was cheeky by doing that thing or whatever. And, I'm going to bring it back to the Netherlands game where I understand Van Gaal. I understand the coaching side of things. Van Gaal was doing what he thought was best for the team. He doesn't. I'm telling you, Van Gaal is not losing any sleep about what people think about him right now. He was doing what he thought was best. I didn't like it personally. because I felt as if the Dutch are better than that. I think they're better players. I saw it in 2010 when they played Spain. They just resorted to a style of football. Which, listen, if that's the coach's decision, fair enough. But narratively, I think a lot of people didn't see the bigger picture where he was riling the players up. They were physically bullying the Argentine players throughout the entire game. And eventually, they did what anybody who plays any sports, from recreational, little scrimmages to competitive. That's part of the game. And they gave as much as they got. And in the end, I love this new Messi. I love the Messi that's not afraid to tell the guys, the Que mira bobo. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I don't know if I even pronounced it correctly. I love that. I was so happy. Everybody was like, So there was one side of the narrative where, oh my God, why is Messi being so disrespectful? But for those who truly understand the game, that's part of it. When the competitive juices are going, you have a go at each other. That's how it goes. This. You're a Barcelona fan. A perfect example. I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. Sergio Ramos versus Messi was like, night and day. These guys hated each other. But here they are in PSG. They're buddies now. Ramos is supporting Messi publicly and saying, XYZ. So, narratively speaking, in Trinidad and Tobago, there was a lot of negativity towards Argentina because they were more non-Messi fans. I wouldn't even say they were Netherlands fans. But it did kind of change my perspective a little bit on that squad, where I felt as if, they went, I don't want to say a little bit too far, but I felt as if they were playing dirty, and then they tried to act like victims afterwards. But that's where it ends. That's football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked myself too, what would have happened if the result had flipped, right? People painting Argentina to be a villain, when I think that at the end of the day, they weren't the ones who started it. I think that it was. I think Van Gaal is V1 of Mourinho, right? I think that they're cut from the same cloth and they play the same mental games. I think that at the end of the day, whether it works or doesn't work, the team that gets vilified is often the team who doesn't walk away, or who walks away with the result and keeps it going because they had the last laugh.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, I personally also believe that it didn't, right? I mean, obviously they made the run to win the World Cup, but it didn't bother them one bit. I don't think Argentina or Argentinians as a whole care much about what the world thinks of them. They only care about what their fans think of them.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, every part of what they did, the actions they took, the words they said, all led to the results they got, and their fans loved every bit of it. That's the only people that they care about. So at the end of the day, man, I think you were happy. Argentinians were very happy. And we all saw how it all panned out for Messi and the Argentina team. So all in all, it's just very, very interesting, right? When I meet an Argentina fan, I like to unpack some of those questions and points because they're not talked about enough.
Correct.
I was freaking out for Messi, mainly for Messi. I'm not really an Argentina fan, but I wanted Argentina to win this World Cup because I wanted Messi to go out as, no debate, the greatest of all time.
Oh yeah.
And I think he's definitely achieved that, at least in my opinion. So this is awesome, man. I think your upbringing and your passion for football is very clear. Let's talk about how it's scaled now into, not really what you're doing today, but I imagine, I mean, you sound like you've been not just, well versed in talking about this game publicly, but also just creating content around this game. I mean, I feel like ExtraTime TV is maybe even coming later in your content creation career. I feel like you've been talking about this game for a while now. So where did that motivation really come from, right? Being an avid fan that just loves this game, knows how to talk about it. When did you decide, you know what, I want to start creating some content around this, putting my face on camera and start trying to make this game and my opinions more relatable to others out there?
It's an interesting journey. I sound like one of those guys in those movies. Let me tell you the story. Light the fireplace or whatever. So it goes without saying, I'm a huge football fan, and I always knew I was a bit more. I mean, Trinidad people love football in Trinidad and Tobago, but I always knew there was a little bit. I always knew that about myself. Now, I didn't know I was going to end up in this career. Like most families, yes, I love my football, but I was focusing on my academics as well. But I was always obsessed with the wider aspects of the game, even as a kid. When we had
let me ask you, what did you think you were going to become? Did you have any career aspirations, or were you just kind of
but like
floating
all
along?
kids, if I'm being really honest with you, and this sounds crazy, I knew I was going to end up in football some way or form. And much to the annoyance of my teachers, they were all academics. It's a cultural thing down here, especially because I'm of East Indian descent. And culturally, we focus on academics. It's all about securing your future, which is great. That's fine. Nothing's wrong with that.
Sure.
But I always knew. I know that sounds insane. Even as a kid, I would visualize. Like I would tell my friends when we were playing football in the community, with our, cheap cleats or what we call them football boots. I would be like, yeah, I'm going to meet some of these guys someday, typical cliche. It sounds like a cliche 80s movie, with an 80s soundtrack and a feel good effect. But, it is what it is. And, there was times I always felt, now I did well. I worked for a telecom company. That's what I was doing because it was a safe choice. But I
Yeah.
always was involved in football. Like even with my recreational team, I made my own team and we would play. And then I started to enter competitions because I always had that hunger for it. And I would get people involved, and I would always pay attention to, using my dial-up internet and go online. Oh gosh, remember those days? And
I do.
go
I do.
go to websites and pay attention to the runnings of clubs. So like people would be like, dude, how do you know these things? I was like, well, I read. We have the internet. And I was like, we have this amazing tool, and you could now get insight into these players. And then I could tell you the exact story because I haven't told much people this when I realized that I'm going to do this. And it's very, I was working at a telecom company. I was perfectly fine. And I was doing I stayed back in the office. Usually we leave at 5, but in that job, you don't ever leave at 5. I probably stayed back till about 8, 9 at night. And I think the World Cup was going on, and I would be sitting down and be reading articles. And I had this conversation with myself. We all have this conversation, that inner voice. And I remember a couple of weeks before, in our local university, I did a project on wearable tech, which is normal now. Everybody has it. But back then, that was like the future. Smartwatches and stuff like this was, what is that? And then this guy came up to me, an American guy, and he's like, hey, why don't you come and do the sport program with us and whatever? And I was like, at first, my first reaction was, well, I'm already established in my career. I'm good. That was my first reaction. I guess it's a safe reaction. And then I was having this conversation with myself, and I was like, I'm in a pretty okay place career wise. Not perfect yet, but okay. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy when I get into my 40s with regret. And what I meant was, I would drive myself crazy knowing there was a chance to try this thing and I didn't. And I made this promise to myself. I said, listen, I'm either going to do this 100% or I'm not going to do it at all. And I made the decision, and I called him up, took him up on his offer, and I went a totally different direction, much to the shock of everybody else. And not my parents. My parents were always supportive. But it did shock a lot of people because I was okay, And I did the sport management program, and I had a very clear goal about what I wanted to do. And I could tell you this, even on the first day, I'm human. I had a little bit of doubt as well. A little voice is like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then, the success, I would say, started to come pretty quickly because then I met a former national player, and then I started to play for the university, but then I was helping him coach as well. And then he liked my use of technology. Back then, Adidas had this My Coach thing, just the use of data and stats in football, which in our arena, that was still unheard of. People weren't doing that. People were still coaching old school. Hey, go to the gym, get really strong, and it'll work out for you in the end. And it just sort of kicked off from there. They called us the Moneyball Duo. I'm sure you saw that movie.
Yes, I did.
When they were telling me about the Moneyball thing, I didn't see that movie, so I didn't know what they were talking about. I saw the trailer, and I was like, yeah, cool, looks good. I'll look at it sometime. And
Yeah.
they would call us, Brad and Jonah, because, characters in the movie.
The movie.
And I would be like, wait a minute. Am I Brad or am I Jonah? And I would, look at me. And then I understood. I saw the movie, and it's kind of like a parallel to that movie where I was kind of like Jonah and Brad, and the coach was more like Brad. Unfortunately, I wasn't Brad. But the concept was the same, and where they kind of changed the game up a little bit, and that's kind of like how I made the jump into football. And My intent was never to get into media, by the way. But that's how I got in, and I started working around these guys. And there was a love for the sport that I think kind of set me apart from the other kids. That hunger for it. Like, I genuinely love just training with a UEFA trained coach. I just love the process because I played with coaches, and to be fair to those guys, they did their best job. But to me, it was exciting. That's like if Leo Messi is going to come and say, "Andre, let me teach you how to dribble." You know,
I'm in.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
in.
down. I would, that's just how it is. Without question, you would do it. And I love the process. I always love the process, not just the game. And we won the university league, which was kind of like the fairy tale ending. I played a little bit as well, and it had its obstacles as well, which that's a whole other story. But you will get obstacles, and then where the media thing took place was where the 2014 World Cup. Some guys kind of like you and myself. They had a little bit of it wasn't really a podcast, but they had a show and was doing okay. And there's like, listen, we need a guy who's an actual analyst who knows about football. Would you like to come on and be with chat with us about the World Cup? I was like, sure. It was supposed to be a one-off, and we went on. I went on, and it was fun. I had some fun with them, and it just sort of kicked off from there. They was like, would you like to come back and do this, regularly? And I was like, sure. And I was not presumptuous enough or arrogant enough. Well, I knew there was a lot for me to learn, so I loved sitting and working with these guys and understanding the process. And then I really started to get more confidence in the media side of things. And that's where it really started to escalate, where I realized now I was in a place where I could now control what people see, in a good way, where there was things that me and my buddies would like to see, but we couldn't see. And all of a sudden now I'm in a position to highlight people that normally wouldn't get highlighted. I started to focus a lot on our local football, which was, to be fair, we're speaking about international football here on this thing, but in our country, there's a lot of good things going on, and it was neglected. And then I wanted to add my twist because I have a bit of a quirky personality. I love to be silly. I was even told by a guy who hired me for a local channel that I'm the Trinidadian Deadpool, whatever that means. So
that's a great nickname.
Yeah, I know. So like at first I was like, "Oh, thanks," and then I was like, "Wait a minute." But I think my personality and the love for the game really helped me transition into the media thing. And then eventually, some people approached me and said, "Hey, dude, why don't you do your own thing?" And even then, I was like, I don't know. And then I started to learn and understand how to create content and add my unique touch to things. And then I stepped away from that channel and started to do my own things, and it just grew from strength to strength. I mean, that's kind of like the beginning of that story.
Yeah, man, your background and your experience, and the fact that you weren't afraid to take any risks along the way, because that is a big fear. It was a big fear of mine with starting my own channel, and even just like starting GOLZtv as a startup. I mean, I think imposter syndrome starts to set in, right? What if because I'm American, people just question my love for this game and don't think I'm that serious about it, or don't know what I'm talking about, and so I always, I guess, try my hardest to be the most knowledgeable person, or try to expand my network as much as I possibly can. But you sounds like you were just from the get-go didn't want to have regret at the very end of all of this, took risks, it panned out for you, and then it scaled into, of course, with some help and some guidance along the way, it scaled into the start of ExtraTime TV, which I think, if people haven't seen that channel, you mentioned before right now in your breakdown that it's become this opportunity for you to bring an audience into how you see the game, right? There are neglected parts of football in your own country. You're bringing a spotlight to that. You're bringing a spotlight to how you see even some of the biggest matches in the world, right? I've seen your breakdowns for El Clasico. I've seen everything from that all the way to like your reaction to a I Show Speed clip, which I thought was hilarious. And so it's you have such unique takes on the game. So when you thought about, you're brand new to content creation, you have an immense passion and knowledge base around football, but you want ExtraTime TV to kind of be its own unique thing, I imagine, right? You didn't want to copy something else that already exists in the market. How did you, because I struggled with this heavily, how did you think about, I don't know, how you wanted the content to look and feel, what you wanted to actually talk about, and has it changed along the way? Is it still kind of on that same path that it was when you first started it?
it always changes, but I guess the extra time TV, just like what you're doing here, is really an extension of yourself, your
Mm-hmm.
authentic self. You can't fake this. There is no. We live in a world where you can't see if somebody is full of crap or not, and so like the thing is that's something I always had since I was a kid. Even when I was a kid, like in Trinidad and Tobago, every country has a unique social settings. So, like in the Caribbean, we listen to Caribbean music. We listen to more, reggae, and in our country, the unique songs here are like soca and calypso and things like that. And and while I do listen to those things, I always had my own way as a kid of doing things. Like, yes, I like those things, but I want to listen to some Cypress Hill, or I want to listen to some. I would listen to classical music. I'm just using it as an
Mm-hmm.
example of how my mind works. Um,
Yep.
I think I guess my parents have to get some kudos for that because they nurture an environment where you can think for yourself, critical thinking. Where
Mm-hmm.
as kids, we all know this. When you're growing up, there are peer pressure and societal norms, I guess, to sound all technical, where you generally, and that's where the fear comes in, and it's normal. That's actually okay. You're wondering, would this kind of make me isolated or whatever? Would this alienate me from other people? It's a normal thing. That's okay. But with me, I was always do my own thing. Anybody
Yeah.
who knows me knows that, and it helped because I knew. Just to answer your question now, um, when we were doing the football content, I knew what I wanted. Even when I went on that first TV show, I told them, listen, I think we should do this. I think we should start interviewing local players. I think we should start incorporating esports into this because I, as a football fan and a consumer of the sport, know what I like. And I know there's people like me out there. And you're proof. This conversation that we're having, I say, if you do the content, people will find you.
Yep.
And if you're worried about what people think, I say how you neutralize that because they had the same question you're asking me now. Because they asked me why you seem so sure about the content. I say it's not just about getting views. That's of course you want views, of course. You want viewership. You are selling a product in a lot of ways in the cynical eyes. But you need to be your authentic self and understand and really be confident about what you're saying. Like if you know for a fact your stats and so on, you will have people that disagree, but you have that sound knowledge that what you are saying is factual. Now, you will have opinions, like, for example, Messi versus Ronaldo. I love Messi. And there will be guys like, oh, he's a Messi fanboy or whatever. But I would listen and you'll have discussions. But you can't be afraid to have those discussions. And I think that's the
Yep.
way, and it's a justifiable fear. But I always tell people fear is kind of like this poison. Um, it always has you kind of in that middle ground where you never really get to be your authentic self, and you need to be that way in this field. And when I come up with content, I always refer to me being a consumer, like what we said at the beginning. Who am I now? I was a guy who loved the game. I know what I would like to see, and I would pay attention to. Then I started to study on my own. The strategies that major companies like Adidas and Nike and all those people used, and I started to understand it's not necessarily that they're always hitting bullseyes with their targets because as a consumer you would be like these guys always get it right. How is it these guys always have these fresh commercials and whatever, and we would naturally think it's just money and whatever, but they you study, you understand your audience, and if you understand the core attributes that why fans like football, and you build your content around that to your authentic self. Don't try to be anybody else. Of course, there's certain things
Exactly.
you learn. There's certain fundamentals that just like football. You do the basic training, but a lot of coaches will tell you if Messi did the traditional basic. No, he did it, of course. But if Messi followed the traditional rules, he would never dribble. He would pass the ball. He would never try to run past three or four guys. He would never try some of those crazy things he would do. And that's kind of that middle ground between genius and also getting the job done. And sometimes you have to take that leap. And sometimes you will get criticized for it. You'll be like, I use a football analogy because it's a football show. You're a player, you have a coach on the sideline, you have two decisions. Do you pass to an open player, or do you think you have the ability to dribble and take on the guy? And it's like a Russian roulette, I guess. You take
Mm-hmm.
on the guy, you get dispossessed, you get ripped to shreds. Why didn't you pass the ball? That's what you need to do, which is valid because I'm a coach. But then, the thought process is you have to be so confident in yourself and your technique that, maybe I mightn't get it right at the first couple times, but eventually I will. And it's a little bit of a balancing act, and trust in yourself and your content. And, it's, I know it sounds like a whole bunch of detail, but that's kind of the thought process I use. And I believe other creators as well in other arenas, genres, and so on, use the same sort of approach, where most really successful people have that individuality about them. And I think that was one of the key attributes to my thing. Like, even having like a discussion with you today, there are lots of people that come to me and say they want to do this, and they would come to me like, "Hey, Andre, I want to do what you do." And you have to have that commitment, because it sounds nice. That's another thing. People get in and they start saying, "Okay, this looks good. I like what you're doing, Andre. EXTV is fire, whatever." And then after a couple of weeks, they get a couple of obstacles and they quit. It's like, yeah, this is not for me. So, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. And that's the thought process I have when I create my content.
I love
and
it.
That's the short version.
Yeah. And you know what? It's probably accurate. That's a short version for probably just about anybody, right? It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. I think back to the earliest days of this show. This show originally, we didn't even know what we wanted to do with it. Originally, it was like we have a couple other hosts that are normally on, and we talked. We just bantered about football from a number of different lenses. We would cover a couple different leagues, and then eventually we would start having guests on. And we found that they had such unique takes, right? They all had completely different stories about how they were brought into this game. And we thought, what if that ends up being our story for this channel? How many stories can we actually tell that make the game relevant to a fan base that just over time in the history of this country, we've never really accepted? Like, the game is growing here and we all see it. We all see its potential, but there's still a ton of naysayers who just believe it will never surpass basketball. It will never surpass American football. And you know what? To an extent, they may or may not be right. I think it's still too early to tell, but I know no matter what, globally, football's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's only going to get bigger. I think at some point, I might be the minority. I think it will overtake every sport. I think it has to. There's no way that America is the only country in the world that will not embrace football long term. I firmly believe that. With that said, though, I know we're running somewhat close on time. I did want to ask something that you mentioned in there, because I think I don't have this conversation enough with creators who don't solely focus on gaming content, right? You mentioned how esports has to be a part of what you do, who you are, the content you create. I think that's true of many football fans. For many football fans, they were brought into this game at times through FIFA, right? Maybe they didn't know football before, and they started picking up FIFA, and that's how they got into this game. And then if you were a football fan, FIFA's how you became good at world geography, right? Like you that's how you knew where all these countries were. That's how you knew where all these players came from. How important has gaming and esports been on your football fan journey?
Very important for me. I lived vicariously through FIFA, the game. When I was a kid and I wanted to be a coach, I would play the career mode, and I would take it very seriously. I would even make jokes with my friends. Oh, I wonder how my players are doing. I need to go home. I think I'm going to sign this guy, and I would just I always had fun with it. It was. And it's something, FIFA understood. They understood their target audience. This is what people like. Just like any other sport as well, basketball, whatever. And it was very important for me. It was interesting. And as the game went along over the years, it got more sophisticated. Before you would just play and that's it. Then they started to add, the managerial aspects. Now, the recent ones, you could negotiate for players. You actually are in a negotiation. And sometimes they would tell like I would try to sign Trinidad and Tobago players. I did a funny segment on that, and it would always give me ideas for content. Like I tried to sign a couple of my countrymen in FIFA, and then I would speak to them and be like, "Hey, listen, why didn't you take my contract, bro? What's up?" Like Kenwin Jones. We even joke about this all the time. I was like, Kenwin, I tried to sign you in one of my first EXTV interviews, and it's a great icebreaker, because why I fell in love with football versus a kid who grew up in the 2000s and this timeline, it's so different. FIFA is such a huge part. And, I even tell some of the older coaches, you all need to accept that this is how it is. Because there is a school of thought where, video games are for kids who stay indoors and so on. And there is some truth to that, of course. But but there's a lot of pro players and a lot of sports that I work in. They love this game. It's a part of their. That's what you get with these players now. So if you're a coach and you don't like it, that's fine, but you have to accept that that's just how things are now. And I think it's positive that there are still kids who can play these games and still go and reach out to the real game. I know there is a challenge where sometimes kids play video games and they don't want to go outside, but to me, FIFA was a crucial catalyst for doing what I was doing, because I would look how FIFA would present things and how they would package things, and I would even joke now with Kenwin Jones and some of these former players when we actually were on the national team. I was like, wow, I used to imagine doing this. I used to be playing this, at home, and now I'm doing it for real. It's hilarious, and it does it.
Yeah.
This might sound hilarious, but it's almost like I was used to it. Like the press conferences, you had these fake press conferences in the game. And I'm doing a press conference, and in my mind, I'm laughing. If you ever see one and you see me grinning now, you know why. Because oh, here we go. I'm living the game now. Here we go.
You've been training for this already. You already knew what to expect. You knew what kind of questions they might ask. I mean, you walked in there confident.
Yeah. So it sounds ridiculous, but it is what it is. Like I got a lot of confidence. Even the what's the word I should use? Even the way the coaches answer their questions, and the tone and so on, and just the general demeanor. It was interesting, and it did kind of help, if I'm being honest, in a way I didn't expect.
I love it, man. I love it. No, I think in all honesty, you have a lot of valid points. And look, I think something that doesn't get mentioned often enough. One, esports has real wheels around it now, right?
Yep.
Like you have EMLS, the EPrem. There are competitions that reward pretty significantly on the monetary side if you're good enough at that video game. But even if you're not, it's a connective bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same way that music connects people, the same way that movies connect people, sports connect people.
Mm-hmm.
I believe gaming has that opportunity. But right now with online play, right? You're meeting players all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's FIFA, you're meeting players who are also footy fans, and you're kind of expanding your network of like-minded fans. And giving each other different perspectives on the game. I think personally FIFA has been massive for so many, and I wonder how big football would be in this country if we didn't have FIFA, if video games didn't exist, right? I think we'd be probably taking a major step backwards. So I can't iterate how important it really has been. Andre, man, this has been a great interview so far. I want to leave you with one quick question, and I'll give you some time to shout out ExtraTime TV and what might be coming down the line. But I'm really curious. You have such unique perspectives of football, and you have the American perspective as well. I ask almost every guest this because I'm really curious for everyone's opinions on it. I told you before on this interview, I believe America will wholeheartedly accept football at some point. It just will happen. If this generation of sports fans has to kind of move on before Gen Z can become dominant, before that happens. I mean, I don't know what has to happen, but it will take place, just a matter of when. What do you think this country is missing, or what's the one thing that needs to happen in order for North America to really embrace football the way that other countries abroad have embraced the sport?
I think if you look at it from a timeline perspective, the US has come a long way. From way back in '94 when they hosted the World Cup. A lot of people were upset. Like why are you taking the World Cup to a country that doesn't care about football, soccer, that sort of thing. And if you look at it from that perspective, from then until now, and some of the data that I got from speaking to people from Adidas and so on, I think it is going to happen. I think you kind of answered the question where it may not be immediate. I think maybe we're like one generation away from it. I actually think it's closer than people think. It is what it is, because the US is such a big, diverse place. I mean, it is what it is. You have the established sports, but I think football has made a lot of groundwork, and I think where they really are becoming successful, because the US is such a diverse country with people from all over the planet. It has infiltrated the culture, whether they liked it or not. Like I recently went to a camp in Boston, and it's coached by a former Trinidad and Tobago player. Anthony Roger is his name. And all those kids there, they're all, typical Boston kids born and raised there. And they love football. They love it, and they say football, which was kind of shocking to me because I was expecting them to say soccer. And these kids, and those kids are the reasons why it's happening. Now, it may not happen. I don't think it will happen the way we think it might happen. I think where the positive outcome will take place is where it becomes as accepted as the other sports. Right now, there's still the people that would turn their nose up. "Oh, I don't want to watch soccer." But to me, the stadiums speak volumes. I look at those MLS games; they're filled. I
Yeah.
look at the response to the Copa America when I was there. So of course, there's the people that don't like it, but the stadiums are filled. And there's some states, that the footballing culture has already kind of dominated. Like, for example, down in Miami and so on. It is there. One in every maybe 10 people, if you have a conversation about soccer, they will get excited. And I think it's
Yeah.
because of the diverse nature of the people in the US that it's going to happen. So I think they just need to keep doing what they're doing. Guys like yourself, because a lot of guys, podcasters and YouTubers I see are from the States. Like, I see boatloads of videos of guys, and I look at their age. Is usually guys in their 20s and younger, some of them. Of course, there's some exceptions. And you would see they have these dedicated, passionate videos about why Messi is better than Ronaldo or Ronaldo. So they're buying into the rivalries as well. Even that iShow Speed guy who's hilarious. He is a very clever guy because I know he's kind of a bit of a troll in a lot of ways. He
Yeah, it definitely
understands.
is.
He has to get some credit. Although he knows how to push those buttons. So for example, he knows, okay, this football thing is a big thing, man. I need to tap into this. Even a lot of celebrities. If you speak to a lot of celebrities like Snoop Dogg and these guys are football fans, and I think as it is now, it's there's not much that really needs to change. I think guys like yourself and many others just keep doing what you're doing and being true to your authentic self, and it's going to continuously grow in the US. I have no doubts that it's going to get bigger, and with the World Cup and also having the Copa America coming up, it's just going to
Yep.
get it's and also technology has helped with FIFA and so on. I think although FIFA is going to change some other stupid thing, I can't remember what it is. I know EA Sports and FIFA separated, but all those
Yeah.
things are why I think the US, which was one of the few stubborn countries when it came to football, I think they're going to have to drop their guard and put their hands up. There's always going to be the people that don't like it, but it is what it is. I think it's come a long way, and it's gonna be a dominant force very soon. That's my honest opinion.
I love that. Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. The 2026 World Cup, it sounds like it's forever away. I mean, 3.5 years, 3 years is really not that long. I think it's going to be here before we know it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
super excited because I think for the first time in a long time, you mentioned 94, the first time in a long time that we will have fans and cultures from all around the world who have significantly scaled up since the 90s that are going to be traveling to this part of the world and for a small period of time embedding their own culture, embedding their own fandom, and just kind of allowing Americans to see what they see when it comes to this game.
Yep.
And I'm so excited to see how the American sports and really football fan base reacts to all of this. I'm hoping that it's even when the U.S. whenever the U.S. exits the competition, that it doesn't change the level of involvement with watching the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's always my biggest gripe about even this past World Cup, right? Is that as soon as the U.S. is out, right, the loudest part of the fan base kind of goes away.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of casual fans stop caring, and it's just another tournament, and then it's kind of come and gone. And I feel like we didn't really make any progress.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be different in 2026, and I'm really prepared for there to be a shift and how the reactions are going to be for this World Cup. We'll see. I think it's going to be amazing. But either way, I think we're kind of kind of out of time for today's episode. Before we go though, Andre,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about kind of really quick what's next for Extra Time TV. You're constantly evolving. You're constantly making this show better as much as you possibly can. What can our audience here at Box to Box expect from Extra Time TV moving forward?
Well, we have a lot of projects. I'll probably just give you a couple real quickly, and we have a secret one that I guess we'll be announcing soon. I just have to finalize a few things, but it's a televised version, a new project with EXTV and a couple other guys as well. So I'll of course let you know as well. So there's that. Then there's also some. We do a lot of Copa 90 style documentaries, but with our style, and also an animation style storytelling, which we're working on, which is it's challenging, but that's what EXTV does. We try to push the limits of what we're doing. So it's some animated type mini short stories about football, that's very unique, more in the Marvel style sort of thing, but animation style. So, and then a lot of esports things, and then there's a tournament that we're going to eventually kickstart. It's a bit of a five-a-side indoor kind of extreme football, cage football sort of thing.
Love it.
So it's a whole bunch of things that we're working on. A whole bunch. Those are the main five.
You are going to be insanely busy for the foreseeable future.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
rightfully so, man. Yeah. I'm so excited for everything you guys have working on. And as soon as those hit Extra Time TV, I'm going to be in the know because I'm subscribed. So if you guys, we're going to link, of course, Extra Time TV down below in the description notes. If you haven't already, go subscribe down below. Stay in tune with all these projects that Andre and his team are working on. I got a really good feeling they're going to be good. They're going to push creative boundaries. And they're going to open up how you think about the beautiful game, which is what we're all about here at Box to Box and GOLZtv. So anyway, Andre, thank you so much, my man. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I think there's so much value for the audience to unpack here. I can't wait to watch this one back. I got a feeling there's going to be a ton of content for the audience to consume. But look, more than anything else, guys, if you stuck around to the end of the episode, I really appreciate you. If you haven't done so already, like the video down below, subscribe to the channel, check out Andre's channel down below in the description. And as I always say, for everybody here at Box to Box, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you guys next time.